today primarily comes from my work in the corporate environment, where I have a consulting practice, and I've been on my own for 20 years now. I guess I celebrated my 20 years. And I do a lot of negotiation work. I do labor relations, union negotiations, turnaround work. And so I have, as I think about it over the years, I've found myself in situations with difficult, angry people. Oh, and don't forget, been involved with hockey. And you can run across some angry situations in hockey. So the key here, what I want to do is give you some tools to have a sense of when you face these situations, what you're going to do. Okay, that's it. That's normal. To avoid them is not going to. Don't. Just recognize that you're going to have people angry with you. You're going to make people angry, and if you have some tools, some skills to get through that, you're going to be in better shape. And I only have a couple of. Okay, so in terms of conflict management strategies, you got 5 different things to look at when you're in a situation where there's conflict. The first is, do I postpone this situation? All right? Just because somebody's bringing this to me right now doesn't mean I have to deal with it right now. And I may want to delay it. I may want to get some other input. If there's heightened emotions, if the emotions are really high, sometimes it's best to say, you're really angry, this is a real issue, let's deal with this in a day or two or a week or two. And if you don't have all the information you need, and you're going to be winging it too much, you might want to go into a postpone strategy. Okay. So anytime anybody has a question or wants an example or wants to talk about this, stop me, let's do that.
Is this on the slide in here?
That should be in your book.
It's just one page. It's on the back there.
They're two-sided, is that what it is?
Yeah, and it's just on the
All
back.
right. Then there's something. Everybody got it? You got it? I haven't gotten into that book, so I don't know how it's laid out. Another strategy is, and there's times where you may feel this and you want to ascertain it for sure, that is, am I in an enforcement mode? And you're going to discover that there's going to be situations you run across, and I know you're angry, but really it is what it is, the rules are what they are. We cut your kid. He was seen as the 16th bet, where he was not one of the top 15. And that's it, I'm not changing it. And so you have to decide, is that an enforcement strategy in that conversation? We're going to use small ice games, small area games and mites. If you've got objections from people, you know, I get real impatient with this because the data is so strong. We should use small area games with the younger kids. That if some old guy comes in and says, "Well, when I played, here's what we did," you know, I lose my patience, and so I have to decide, how am I going to deal with this? And I have to make that read. I might postpone that conversation, and then we'll get a bunch of handouts and articles and get them to that person and say, "Read this before we talk again." Or I may say, "No, we'll enforce it." Okay. Third is to accommodate. Accommodate, really what that says is I'm going to get the other person's input. I did that this morning with a guy here. There's a side issue not related to this workshop. Because I had heard about something he had done, and it was confusing. I knew I had one side, and I needed to get into a negotiation, do a conversation. And I didn't really know for sure what the right answer was, and I wanted to get into, I wanted to learn more, because I had to go back and bill some other people. And so in that case, this individual, he was more of a subject matter expert than I was. So then I was more prepared to accommodate, to hear his side, possibly agree. I had to kind of digest all that. The other person, another issue is this guy, this issue was, although it was important to me, it wasn't as important to me as it was to him. And so his ownership level was much greater. And so I was much more willing to say, well, I'm willing to let him go with what he wanted to do. And sometimes that gets into like a power game. Sometimes if we let power control us, that's hard for us to do. But at times we need to say, you know what, this is really not my show, it's not my road show. I don't like what you're doing with this, and I need to kind of tell you that. But at the end of the day, you'll be more successful doing it your wrong way than you will be doing it my right way. You know? And that's just the way things are. So you look, sometimes I gotta accommodate. And then another reason to accommodate is I want to preserve the relationship. Well, I want to live to fight another day with this person. I know that I'm going to work. I need to work with you tomorrow. We're going to be a part of this hockey board, and I just don't want to. I don't want to waste all my ammunition on this issue, and I'll just bite my tongue and let it go. As long as it's somebody else has got some expertise, as long as somebody else has a bigger stake in it. Okay. And there are situations we have to compromise. Often compromise, when you think about it, it's really used when we don't have a whole lot of time. We need to get an answer, and we got to get an answer fairly soon. Another reason to compromise is if what you're looking at has somewhat, it's temporary. And we're not going to live with this for the rest of our lives. It may be a temporary solution to a problem, and I'm a little more willing to compromise. Does that make any sense? Think about it. And so we give a little, you give a little, I give a little, we get to some point in the middle, and then we can get on with life. And there's, I'll look back to when I covered the fifth. Then there's the explore strategy, where both parties work together, try to create and explore new ideas. And you want to choose that strategy when you really need a win-win solution. So you don't want there to be any losers, you want it to be win-win. And when you want to make sure that everyone's concerns and feelings are taken into consideration. It's almost like the outcome is just as important as the relationships we maintain during this dilemma. If you think about that with your boards, you're going to be there for a season or a couple of seasons, you've committed. There's times when you say, let's not have a fight here today, let's explore this. Let's take some space, let's take some time, let's get some more information, let's work through a win-win. You want to consider this when it's very important, when the outcome is very important. Don't go into a compromise where you realize we got to get green or red, we can't get a mixture of those two colors. These strategies, each one has their time and place, and you have to decide when. Okay? So let me just stop here. There's a couple rules. They're not in your book. But when you're in a conflict situation with another person, another party, another group, there's two rules that I would suggest you should consider that you live by. One of them is that in every situation, you must allow your opponent, I say opponent, an opportunity to save face. We don't always see that. You know, we look at government, we read a newspaper, there's a lot of denigration that goes on. But it really, allowing the other person to save face, to come away with, I'm a wholesome person, I'm a good person. This was a disagreement on an issue, not on your humanness or my humanness. And the second rule is that in a situation, in a conflict or in a disagreement with another person, we must always consider that there could be a third alternative. And that means kind of letting go of your anger, letting go of your position, letting go of the fact that I dug my heels in. And you can't do that. You're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna face abusing at some point in your life. But the reality is that there may be another solution. So you have to let some other people in to look at it and help you think it through. What I've discovered in my own personal experience with this kind of stuff is that I get to be emotional, so I'll lock in on something, and then I lock in on it, it's clear in my head, I've slept on it, and then I get into a conversation with somebody about it, and they challenge me. My natural behavior is to look to defend my position more than to explore what the other person is saying. Is that, you ever been in that world? We do that with our spouses, I think. So we have to stop ourselves and go, let somebody else in, give us some perspective, and get us off the hook. This happened to me one time, and I think I can tell this story. I was working for this company. I was running this company. This owner had 3 businesses, and I was running one of them. And he had his daughter working for me. She ran an operation in Chicago. She was nuts. And she didn't have any business sense, but she thought she did because she was the daughter of the owner. And so I was realizing we were getting at loggerheads, and I said, I can't. This is not going to work. And so I went to a son-in-law who was a good friend of mine I could talk to, and I told the son-in-law, I said, I'm going in to see the old man tomorrow, and I'm going to give him an ultimatum. Either I'm quitting or she's gone. And I was resolved, told my wife, I said, I'm not doing this a day longer. And my friend and son-in-law goes, no, Slaird, no, just hang on, you're not seeing the world wide enough. And I just couldn't believe that there was any other solution. And what we did is he went off with me, and we went to Chicago. She had this business, it was kind of a division. We bought another company, found this other company, attached it to that, and she traded her inheritance for that entity. And I kept my job, we kept the company, we carved out it. It was like, how in the hell did he ever figure out we could pull that off? And it really accomplished a lot of good things, but that was nowhere within my repertoire of thinking at that time. I was too emotionally distraught, I wanted out. And when we think about some of the stuff, Steve, you're over there, Minnesota hockey, we get in these situations where we get at each other, and we've got to find that third alternative.
We never are.
Is that right?
We never are.
Never? All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, like, on accommodating and compromise, knowing that we're all volunteers for our associations, and you have that very small percentage of people that are just always wanting more, wanting instant gratification right there, being difficult. How far, or what would your, I guess, opinion be on how far should we be bending or trying to accommodate, knowing that we all have jobs, Monday through Friday jobs, and then this is what we're doing, volunteering.
Anybody want to answer her?
I mean, for me personally, I run into this situation. I'm not a hand holder. Like, I'll give you direction. You need to get me whatever forms or whatnot, and if you don't have them turned in, let's say birth certificates, for instance, you don't have them turned in, okay, then your kid's not going to be rostered and not playing. And sometimes that's viewed a little harshly, that maybe I should send out 6 more emails to these parents.
So you went to the enforcement style fairly quickly on that, because there's no alternative in your mind on the birth certificate.
Well,
That makes sense on that example.
We've already extended the deadline twice, so and then, then those people get escalated, and it's just how far should we be going with accommodating and
Are you
compromising?
asking what to do different or asking?
Yeah, I mean, like, what is your opinion in those
I
situations?
think that's an example, at least to my ears, is that you have a outside governing policy that you have to adhere to that policy. That is not a case of subjectivity. Should your kid have made C or B? We can kind of dig in and maybe go to those other ones. I would have hunkered down just like you did and been like, I sent you 6 emails. The thing with the birth certificate,
There's no gray area.
there's no gray area, right? That's not a bend. That to me sounds more like we've got a policy. We're at the enforcement spot.
I know you haven't gotten in the birth certificate for your child yet, and we've extended it once. And I'm sure you've got a good reason for not doing that. But at this point, based on the job I've been asked to do in the association, I'm going to need you to write a letter to the president of the association explaining the further rationale that you have for holding back your child's birth certificate, okay?
Sure.
And then I can sit back and, and tell you, you cut your kid off the team, but I've left you with some kind of sense of you got to go do something. So what do you want to do? You want to write the letter to the president, or you want to give me the birth certificate? I'll let you decide. So there's ways to how you do that. Hopefully these things I'm sharing allow you to hone your interpersonal competence a little bit. That's kind of what we're looking at. It really is, it's like skating. It's reading and reacting on the ice. What do I do? Well, it depends on what I'm seeing. But the message, one of the messages that comes through, and we're going to continue with, is around your emotions. It is the control of your emotions and where you sit in the disagreement. Okay? Is that helpful? Mm-hmm. Rules for tough situations. Keep your cool. We always, in the coaching clinics that I do with junior goal coaches, it's interesting that on the bench, oftentimes there'll be coaches, and coaches will get in a fight. Have you ever seen that? You've experienced that, but coaches don't agree, and so and what happens is that you'll be the head coach, and I'll be the assistant coach, and there's a bad call, so I start lighting into the ref. And you're going, oh, geez, what are we going to do? And so you tell me, hey, Slaird, calm down. And my reaction is, I am. So this whole thing about keeping cool, what we advise coaches to do is have a code word. So in your workings, there's a kind of a code word, and I see groups do that. Just a code word. Lollipop, for example. A silly word where 2 adult men on a hockey bench, and one says to the other, all the kids start to kind of giggle and laugh, but it means something. And during calm times, you say to your other coaches, if one of us gets out of line and another one just looks at us and says lollipop, let's attach some meaning to that. And the meaning is, whatever you're doing, stop. No debate. No, I am calm. What's the matter? It's just, I said lollipop. The rule is you stop. I sailed competitively for a while. I was a crew member for a guy Lake Minnetonka, and he was one of these Jekyll-Hyde skippers, and he was really, really good, but he was just cantankerous, and at times, and he would just lose his cool and start yelling at people. And as soon as he would say, Mark, calm down, he would go through that, I am calm. That whole routine. And I said, this isn't working. And so I brought my coaching whistle one time. I had my coaching whistle, and I told everybody on the boat, I said, not if Mark gets out of when Mark gets out of hand, I'm going to blow my whistle. And they looked at me like I was a little crazy. So we get out there and things get tense, and Mark does something inappropriate, so I just blow my whistle. And he starts to argue with me. I just look at him and smile and blow my whistle again. And now he's arguing with some idiot who's blowing the whistle. It worked. We all started laughing. And then the next week I came back and my whistle was in my pocket, and they wouldn't let me on the boat until my whistle was in my neck. So those kinds of things, but it's keep your calm. Especially in youth hockey, you have to see through the drama. We're talking about people's children. My God, you know, those are gonna be the tough ones. And just know it, it's drama. Know it, recognize it, and be able to kind of carve that out. And appreciate it. The way I say it is respect it. People love their kids and they want the best for them. It's hard, and so these situations, you got to figure that out. The other thing is in these jobs, the birth certificate issue is an interesting one. It ain't your problem, so don't take it personally. You know, it is what it is. That player didn't make the cut. You know, as soon as it really gets a little contentious, they'll figure it out. Either they got to write the letter to the president or they got to come up with it. So make sure you're able to separate the people part from you and don't take things personally. Things always work better when you maintain self-esteem with the other person. No matter how hard that is, it's worth doing. It's that whole saving face, that rule. And often, we'll talk about this a little bit, but focus on the issue, not the person. You know, everybody else got their birth certificate in. Why are you so slow?
I'm special.
Yeah. versus, is there anything I can do to help you get your birth certificate in? You know?
Yeah, I just can't find it. We're waiting to get it.
Okay. How long do you think it's going to take?
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks, then we got a problem with your son playing. You know that? And I don't know what else to tell you, but that's what I'm living by. It's not my issue, but I've got to live by that rule. So 6 to 8 weeks could be a real problem for your son playing. So you may want to expedite that with whoever you need to, but we've got a problem. So it's just kind of the way you dig into these things. Because I really know he's an idiot. That's why he doesn't have this.
It's true.
But it is, how do I view this issue? Do I view it as him the problem, or can I just deal with the problem separate from him, the person? Listen carefully and show it, but don't fake it. You know, it's got to be a sincere listening. And so a lot of people, especially in business, especially leaders, I believe listen well, but they refuse to show it. It's not macho, you know, to feedback. And maybe just clear, you know, let me feedback to you what I heard you say, or let me ask you again. They just want to move on. I know you well, we've been through this. And it hurts. It just kind of hurts. You should really have a better sense of showing that, truly listening. Because sometimes when you find yourself, if you do things like tell me more about that, you find yourself, you'll listen better, rather than just taking what you get first go around and then trying to make your decisions based on it. Show you care, express empathy. Many of these issues with parents in hockey can be dealt with by showing empathy. But it's got to be appropriate. And I take the example of the parent who's frustrated, angry because their son or daughter didn't make the team they wanted to be on. And my gosh, I'd feel the same way. I've been through that. I had 3 sons that played. And they didn't always make the teams that I had kind of hoped they'd make. And so you kind of have to bite your tongue. And there was nothing more refreshing than to talk to somebody who told me, yeah, your son was right there. He was right in the line. You know, he would have been the next guy. You know, a bit of an empathetic statement that doesn't go too far. But yeah, they could only take 15 skaters. You know, that's just showing that is helpful. Maintaining constructive relationships. Some of this stuff seems obvious. often, we talked about that in the different approaches. There's always going to be another day, especially in your community. There's nothing worse in a community to have, and I've seen it over the years in associations, that the Joneses won't talk to the Smiths anymore because of an incident, and how sad that can be. And so they really strive for what's more important, the resolution of this issue or the ongoing relationship of these people. And getting clear on that can be important. Sometimes the ongoing relationship is more important than the resolution of this issue. That's why you want to jam things into a delay situation, postpone it, or possibly accommodate, or even compromise. Choose your battles. You're probably thinking of some examples of that in your own head. When are you going to go to war? Huh? You got one in your head?
So one of the guys at my discipline group is committee, I just sent him a picture and said, I'm learning to be more like you because he does this for a living at the school. And he just sent me the text about one of the people that we've gotten battle about and had to remove. And yeah, it's a tough scenario, and it's a tough way to tell a parent that your actions need to be accounted for, and you no longer can be in the arena.
Yeah. Most associations go back in their history, and they've got dads that they've prohibited from entering the arena for their children's games. But, I didn't sign up for that, did I, in this job? Well, you kind of sort of have, so. Establish your authority. That may mean letting that person be clear with that person that you are the authority figure, or it may mean to make sure to let them know that you're not. I'm not the authority figure on this issue. This needs to go to another person or a committee, to a process. I can help deliver this to that process, but I'm not going to give you my opinion on what should happen. Or it may be, yes, you've got to the right person. I'm the decider, but I'm not going to decide today. I need some time, need some space, but I will decide. You got to be astute to that. Know when you're going to do that. I find myself often, especially in hockey, because hockey's got so many different layers of process that people expect that I'm going to make a decision. I'm the authority figure on things, and I'm not. And I've got, and then I try to, if I pawn that off inappropriately, I look like a big loser, and they walk away pissed off. They don't have a solution, so I've got to be clear on, no, it's not me. I'm close to it. I understand it, and I can help your issue get through the system.
I think one of the other, things that I've tried to say to our group is, as president, my job is to not have an opinion unless I have to, is to really play that unbiased, data-driven mediator to ensure that both sides are evenly understood. So when I have people stop me and be like, well, what's going to be your vote on the blah, 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 or which way are you leaning on the blah, 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 I really try to just reinforce that I feel my job, unless I have to be the tiebreaker, which is in the bylaws or whatever the case may be, and of course I'm going to have opinions when I have to vote, but is to really ensure that everybody's voice is being heard. And that has so far, gone fairly well. But we'll see.
I'd like to go off on that for a while. Okay? Everybody clear on what you said? Makes sense? I'd rather have you do? I think you're right on. And if you're the president, the president, that's a good position to have. I'm going to be the last person to vote. I'm going to hold off, I'm going to read. But before you get to that position, I would ask you to articulate clearly with your association what your expectations are for success. what things you believe Chaska Chan needs to go after this next year or the next 3 years. That you may get input on setting this, but you're going to declare, this is our strategy. These are the strategic initiatives we expect. These are the things we want to make better over the next 2 or 3 years. And if everybody knows that, it makes her strategy, her behavior pattern, a lot more successful. Because you sit back, just like you are now, with your arms crossed in that authority position, and you're saying, keep talking, keep working it. You know where I feel because we laid out
The plan.
the
vision.
plan, the strategic initiatives. Okay?
Yep.
You with me on that?
That's great.
Yeah. And as leaders, it's setting that, so often we go into these jobs, especially these volunteer jobs, and it's just, we're going to continue the status quo. We've got to run this association, we're going to continue the status quo. I'm going to tell you, you will enjoy your role more if you are the leader to set a plan, or if you're not the leader, to work with the leader to set a plan. Minnesota Hockey is going to have a new president in the fall, Steve Olheiser. So Steve was here this morning, I bellied up to Steve and I said, Steve, how you doing on your strategic initiatives? Kind of looked at me. I want to work that with him. I don't care what they are, but I believe that if he sets some, then everybody else rallies and kind of gets an idea of what we're trying to do. And that helps resolve differences. It acts as a referee on conflicts. And it's a lot better to lay out those strategic initiatives in a time of calm. Okay, not when there's a fight. Thank you for bringing that up. Take initiative to make things better. That kind of comes under this. These jobs are a lot more fun when you're out there taking initiative. That's my experience. And the toughest one, apologize when appropriate. That can be difficult. Okay, so now at this stage, what we've done in the past, I've done this 4 years, there's usually some conversation. People want to talk about situations they face and get some help from the group or from me on what am I going to do? Do I have any issues in my face right now that I need to deal with? So I'm open to having some collegial conversation with the group.
I do have a situation I'd love to get the perspective on with regards to, so we were having your typical, we have a hockey development committee and then we have the board, and the hockey development committee doesn't have any voting power. The board oversees their stuff, but the reality is, because the hockey development committee owns evaluations, they own coach selection, they own all the things that people really care about, there's this element of conflict between the two groups. And new board members came in. Obviously, when new board members are elected, you get lots of feedback through the election process of this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, you gotta stop that, blah, blah, blah. Well, we had a situation where some of the new board and our hockey development committee went head to head. And the hockey development committee said, I need a mandatory meeting because we're gonna basically have a mudslinging battle, was what it was ending up going to be. So I had to make the decision on whether I had an informal mudslinging dialogue where a lot of the feedback we get from an association perspective is we're not driving enough transparency to really what's happening on the HDC or what's happening, the board, we have minutes and those are out there. So I made the decision, and I would love to know, just get people's perspectives of how I could have handled it differently, to call an official open board meeting instead of an informal discussion that I just felt was going to go in circles and make people feel really bad. So we could have formal documentation around the discussion, and I sent it out to the entire association saying we're gonna have this meeting. If you have concerns about what's going on, then please attend. It's open, anybody can attend. And
It was going to be informal.
well, no, that needs to be formal. So an official open board meeting with minutes that anybody could attend with the topic around what's happening within the HDC. I got a lot of feedback that made, so we had this meeting, it was a pleasure, it was a wonderful discussion. But
You
I
being
got.
facetious or
I'm
honest?
being facetious. I mean, it was good for about the first hour and 15 minutes, and then 45 minutes of it got really fun. But I got feedback that because I decided to make that formal, we weren't able to have authentic conversation. Because things were going to be documented and made available through meeting minutes, we weren't able to get to the root of the problem of trust between these two groups that needed to be repaired. So I'm just curious as to, like any other recommendations of how I should have handled it. And of course, I was like president for all of 2 weeks when I had to do this, so.
I think the fact that you formalized it, gave it the proper weight to be able to say, this is important enough to us as a growing association that we do need to formalize this. So if you've got gripes that you want to leave outside, as soon as you walk in this door, you're part of the solution. People that are out there that are sniping and griping, they're part of the problem. I agree, I would have formalized it myself.
What do your bylaws say about that? Because I know ours say that we want to have any kind of formal meeting outside of the normally scheduled meetings, that it would have to be 3 members of the board come to the president requesting this meeting, what the intention is, laid out. So if you don't have that in your bylaws, someone could think that, oh, she's calling this because she wants to have the power, or the president wants to have the power, or vice versa, that there was a reason that they wanted to do this formal instead of what it could have been just, let's have a committee meeting and invite the president and somebody else here and discuss it, then bring it back to the next regular meeting. So I would say if it's not in your bylaws.
So it's in the bylaws that the
Okay.
president can call any formal board meeting.
Okay, see, now
Or,
ours
so
doesn't
that,
allow that, it has to be
and,
done by,
or it has to be a quorum. And our board is 13 individuals, and you have the executive committee plus all the commissioners. And so there's 13 voting board members, and then the HDC is separate. And so the HDC chair said, I want a meeting mandatory that all the board members show up. So it wasn't just like, but it to be an informal discussion, because some of this negative feedback was happening from a new board member. And it was like, we want to have this all together to put that person
The
on the spot.
HDC runs separate from your board. They run pretty separate.
Well, board has oversight, but they're a subcommittee that has their own meetings.
Do they
has
have
their-
kids in the system?
Oh, yes.
Wiped out, it's there. But it also, at the same time, weeds out the people who are there for the wrong reason. The guys and gals who are there to put their kid on the team. You get the people there for the right motive. If their actions and their words are put in writing in the meeting minutes, there it is. And then when they come to the regular board meeting, they can submit their report with their meeting minutes.
So she needs to make sure the HDC produces minutes before they start yapping.
Right.
So this is what was, and I don't
This
mean
is
to make
something
it
going
mean,
forward.
I don't mean to make it all about me and my problems, but it was written in the
We'd
bylaws.
rather talk about your problems than mine.
Yeah. It was written in the bylaws that they should be conducting meetings that are known with meeting minutes, and they haven't since 2017. So when we approached with that data, like again, back to data driven, which, and so I loved your point about, think of the third option. We kind of got there with this exact topic because where they came back, which I had empathy for, that it's a subcommittee. It's not like they meet once a month. These guys and this hockey development committee does so much work. They are putting hundreds and hundreds of hours, and they're like, we're working all the time. We're texting each other. We're working on things. It's not even a formal meeting that we have monthly. So what my recommendation was, I said, okay, we can adjust the bylaws to not have it be formal meeting minutes, on X date. But I want you to then write a monthly submission of what you guys achieved that month and what was talked about. And I will submit it as an appendix to our official board meeting, and you will come to that board meeting consistently and give an update.
Do you have anybody running those meetings, like hockey director?
There's a chair to the HDC. But,
Okay.
so we can move on. But
No,
it's like a
there's
lot of
there's some
different.
interesting group dynamics
Right.
happening there. If you don't see it, the HDC, you see this in associations, these are the guys this is the real fabric, man. They own the hockey stuff. That board, they're just doing fundraising. See, I'm kind of talking smart here about this, but you'll see that. So they, even though they're subservient to the board supposedly, there's a natural tendency for them to get ahead of themselves because they work their ass off.
Right, they're working hard. I'm not.
I get all that. So those are just the group dynamics you got to deal with. You got to choose consciously when you deal with them. My feedback is I think you did the right thing by having the more formal meeting. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Because not all groups are able to talk informally. Any doctors in here? I had a client a handful of years ago, orthopedic surgery center, 8 orthopods. Now, if you know anything about orthopedic surgeons, they're one notch above God. Okay. And there are 2 groups of 4 that merged together, and they could not talk to each other respectfully in a group session. And after consulting with them for probably about 3 months, did a project, interviewed their people. The only meaningful recommendation I could make to them was that anytime they got together as a group of 8, they had to have a trained facilitator and follow Robert's Rules of Order. That was the most unfulfilling project I've ever had. To walk away with that being the recommendation. Steve. Now you know, Steve Kapinski, he is a district director for District 5.
Yeah, sorry, I do have the director for D5. Well, and I see a lot of these tough situations kind of from another perspective a lot of times. But what I would encourage you all, if you're not the president of the association and you're the registration coordinator or a level coordinator, lean on your infrastructure you have within your associations too. You're not alone. If you're the registration coordinator and you're just getting drilled by somebody, listen to them, take it, but also then say, I will consult our president. You have those resources within your association. Include them in. They can't help you if they don't know there's a problem. Conversely, I'll tell every president in these places, use your district director. Call them up, call her up. Bounce things off them. More than likely, we've been presidents, we've been coordinators, and we've been directors. We have a little bit more experience. Just the point of historical, we can also then see help you through the personality part of it, the ego out of it.
You get enough calls where they want to bitch at you. You'd love to get some calls where they say, give me some advice.
Well, when we do, and I think I try to do that with my district presidents, call me. If you have a question, you have a concern, call me, and we can work it out. I get calls from their parents all the time. And the first thing I will ask, and I would do it, I would actually call their president and say, do you know who so-and-so is? Yeah, they're such a wingman. Great, what's their problem? What do you think their problem is? I have no idea. Call them up. And I'll talk to the parents. Then more than likely, more often than not, 100%, I mean, I can't say 100% of the time, they've got nothing to go back to their association. Their association doesn't know their problem. So then you revert back to their, have you talked to your president? Well, no, he's not going to do it. He's like, no, he or she's fine. Talk to them. They can't fix it unless they know about it. And at that point, when we talk, I call back to the president or their presidents and say, here, I talked to so-and-so. Here's their issue. If you don't hear from them, let me know. And conversely, I tell the parent, if you get back to the president and they haven't responded to you, let me know. Because then, as a director, I get involved. Trust the process sometimes, though, is really what it comes down to. And make the parents go through the process. Make them go through the chain.
All right, Steve, thank you. I'm going to ask, anybody else got one they want to share? Hammer out. Okay.
I got one on levels. So we're a decent sized association, therefore, here's the 2 arguments. We're big enough that we should be AA Bantam and AA Pee Wee. But the other argument is, if we do that, we're probably going to have a pretty losing record, and we're going to lose kids that just tired of getting pounded in every game. That is a live debate, not at the board level, but outside of board meetings, where parents are, and the ones that are vocal will show up at a meeting and be like, I heard you guys are thinking about going AA, that's suicide. You're going to lose every kid, they're all going to quit football, and they're all going to quit hockey. And you get the next parent in the next meeting that's like, that's a great idea. We're bigger than this, we're bigger than that, we should go for the goal.
Okay, you've got a group that's going to vote on that, right? There's an established group that will decide that.
Correct.
Okay, so it's a matter of getting the process to the point where they can live with the vote. Okay.
but it's conflict that sometimes happens outside
Oh,
of the board
absolutely.
room.
That'll always be there.
So, take a lesson from the Minneapolis City Council. I don't know if anybody follows that stuff, but they just instituted a very interesting ruling on housing. What do they call it? Upzoning. You know what I'm talking about? They just upzone the entire city. What does that mean? It means if you got a lot, single-family residence in Minneapolis, anywhere, you can tear down that house and build up to a triplex. And so they're trying to drive affordability, which doesn't necessarily get that, and density, and what was the third thing? I forget. So I was really curious as I watched this process unfold. And what they did that was interesting is they had way more public meetings than I would ever have imagined they would have done. And I went to one of them. I went to a meeting, it started at 4 and it went till 10. Well, I only stayed for about an hour and 20 minutes to get a feel for it. That meeting was nothing but, it was a city council, and they had, you could sign up to speak for 2 minutes. And they had speakers for 2 minutes from 4 to 10. And they just, citizens got up and were able to state whatever they wanted to state on this issue for 2 minutes. So when 2 minutes was done, a bell went off and they were done. And I'm listening, and I'm trying to keep track, and it was kind of 50-50. But yet, in our government, the process was laid out. They were going to vote. So there might be a lesson there is that you might want to go overboard on soliciting input in a structured, proper way, but yet you need to be clear with who's going to make this decision, who's going to vote on it. And you need to talk to those voters and make sure they know what they're going to get involved with here. They're going to hear all this stuff. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because on the other hand, on this one, there really is no right answer. You could live with either one, double A or A for a while. And over time, it becomes apparent that it becomes more obvious. My belief is that in this case with your association, and your association is trying to grow back. It kind of was, and it shrunk a bit and now it's coming back, and especially with the merger with Irondale, so I get all that. But it might be helpful to get more iterations on this discussion with more people in the hockey community.
You're
That's
right.
just my thought.
Sunlight's a great disinfectant, right?
The size of your program doesn't necessarily dictate the level of your teams.
No.
The ability of where your children are at,
Agreed.
you know, because at some point then, I mean, is the game supposed to be fun too? So if we're pushing them above their limits, because you hear all the time, in order to be the best,
Gotta play the best.
you have to play the best. Okay, well, there's a lot of holes in that. I've had high school coaches come and tell me that. I'm like, you know what? You're right. When they're ready to be there. But if it's going to be a season where it's 127 goals against, and they scored 6 to the good, there was no development there. All they did was spend the whole season chasing the game. Okay? So you got to set them up for a little bit of success and a little bit of failure, but not 100% of one or the other.
Who was in Dan's presentation right before lunch? The bikes, this is the bikes
Yes.
video, isn't it?
Yes, it
You were
is.
there? Yeah. Yeah, this really cute little video, and it ADM, you know, what age appropriate training is. So this little kid, how old is that kid? About 7 or 8? 8. And they're on a cul-de-sac, and there's 3 bicycles. There's a bike that's kind of small, he can handle really well. Then there's a bigger bike, and then there's an adult bike. He gets on the little bike, and he's going around there fast as can be, and he's total control. Then he gets on the intermediate bike, and he's doing it. And I was thinking, if I was the dad, I'd be kind of proud. Holy cow, he's handling that middle-sized bike. Not going as fast, a little awkward, but he's doing it. That's great, I like that. And then he gets on the big bike and he falls over right away. So what's the right bike for him? Well, it's obviously not the adult bike. But the debate is, which one of the other 2 is it? Because as the dad pushing my kid, I really liked what I saw on that intermediate bike. But when I looked at his face, he was having more fun on a small bike.
A little bit of challenge is good, but too much is discouraging.
Sure.
You know, so I mean, you have to look at your own program where it's at. It might be, yes, we're going to go double A, but it's going to take us 5 years to get there.
So his case right now is, he's got a constituency that wants to be able to articulate, just like you are to him. And I think he's got to let a whole bunch of people talk at him and his voters.
For me, double A is the new boutique level. Okay, so now we have programs that are doing double A, but now they don't have A. So you've got a whole group,
They
so
go
now,
from double A to
let's say
jump
in
to B.
District 6, you're at the Bantam A level. Well, now where there was 12 Bantam A teams to play against, now you have 5. Because we've allowed them to have a double A, but they don't have to have an A. Okay, for me, personal opinion, if you're gonna have double A, you have to have an A. Because then at Pee Wee's the same thing. Our Pee Wee's are playing at Pee Wee A, but there's only 6 teams to play against instead of 12, because the other ones won't be double A. So now they're going and finding this double A program. Now they're making a new, now these double A's are playing in Maple Groves, they're going outside the districts to make this little, there's some things there, but
Yeah.
you gotta do what's right for your kids at that time.
Good. I think we're about done, unless you have any more questions or comments. Is this helpful at all?
Yeah, thank you. The outgoing board president that I took over for said, "You're going to love the job. 95% of the parents will be grateful at the end of the season. 3% have all bark and no bite, and 2% you're never going to please."
It is.
What do you think about that statistic?
Well, I believe that in this game, there's a normal distribution, and you're going to get a normal distribution, some skewing in your association. The reality is that the vast majority are going to be just fine, upstanding adult parents. You'll have no problem. They're appreciative of what you're doing. And you're going to find yourself spending 90% of your time on a small minority of the parents. And so it's easy for me at my stage to say, just kind of calibrate that, just know. And the people that you're never going to change their mind or convince them, don't worry about it. You got to deal with them, but don't worry about it. Because you're not going to not necessarily win. The problem is that middle of that bell-shaped curve, you're not going to talk to those folks very much. You know, and I think back, I was at a hockey, high school, a Dyna game. My kids came through a Dyna, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at them, and I see this guy and I'm going, I think that guy was a dad on a team I coached with my middle son. So we started talking, sure enough, and he was the guy that, in this team I had a Bantam C team, and the way it was structured, we did not do well. And this dad, though, every game, after the game, he was down there with a big smile. "Thanks, coach, the boys had fun today." And I'm going, what are you talking about? He just got our ass handed to us, you know? But he would, and I'll never forget that positiveness, and that kept me going, you know? And those little guys are out there, you kind of have to find them. Because I think most of the people are sane and get it, and you will get most of your problems from the tails on the bell-shaped curve.
We talk a lot about, this game would be great if we didn't have parents.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have any money to run your program.
But if you think it back to, if you're always centering around kids, and however you operate, it's in the best interest of the kids. Like I told one of our board members who's a people pleaser, I'm good with my friends, I don't need any more. So if I make somebody mad because I'm doing something right for a kid, I'm okay with that. And you can't really argue that if you always keep in the middle. Now if you get, my kid likes t-shirts, if I want to go down and everybody gets a t-shirt, now it's because to champion my cause, it might be a little bit different. But for the most part, if you keep that in the center and then top of mind, then typically whatever you decide or your crew comes up with, you can live with.
Yeah, that's right. You're not going to make them all happy. You're not going to. Good. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for paying attention. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a good tour of duty with your board assignment, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.